Oh, you can tell I am enjoying a format when this is not just the first discussion outside of your draft plus battle stuff, but the second one. Hey guys, this is Gamer Cal. Welcome to another base to Neo Genesis discussion, I guess. Here, it's going to be a little bit different because we're actually going to focus on some deck stuff this time. As you can see in the main one I have out here, I have 6 decks or so set up here, plus a bunch of idea stuff that I can't actually personally do. These are a fair few things I've been testing this week. We've actually played most days this week because it's been really fun. It's been fantastic to not have to... It's not as if we haven't played like Dark Vileplume and stuff like that, but it's been lovely to actually have games where we can play better cards that don't just stop the opponent from playing the game on turn 1, going etc etc. It's been so good. So yeah, I want to kind of go over some of the decks, and I mean this one is the deck to beat right here. So it's probably a good place to start. This Feraligatr is disgusting. It was famous for being the top deck after rotation, so when energy removal leaves the format, but granted we haven't played as many decks that have had energy removal in them, so there's definitely a chance this just gets bodied in tomorrow's, at the time of recording, tomorrow's battle stream, It might just get completely destroyed because if people pack like too much super and regular energy removal stuff, maybe I can't keep up. I don't know, but it's so strong. The ability is really nice, so the Pokemon power, being able to discard extra energy that you draw after a Professor Oak or an Elm or something like that. And then Riptide is just scalable. It does so much damage. You can easily hit 70 to 90 damage on this thing. Shuffling, 6 to 8 energy back into the deck is not unreasonable. It can scale higher than that. I have done 110 as the highest, but it's just so good. You can do pretty much everything with this. The only downside is it takes free water energy to actually play, which means the energy removal is going to take it apart. But beyond that, it's got 120 HP, it's the biggest thing you can play. It's got an uncommon weakness, grass is not that popular of a type to be going against. And it just beats up everything in one hit, it's so strong. The Croconaw itself is also not to be underestimated though. It does do 50 damage for free energy, which is perfectly fine. Taking the top 3 cards away from your deck is not always bad, because that means you might have more waters in the discard for the next turn Gator to go ahead and buff it out. So that's obviously really good. I'm not super sold on this Feraligatr, but there are reasons to play it. I do kind of feel like you might need to have something that isn't the Riptide, and to be fair, I only have 2 Riptides, so I kind of wanted something else that way. Pulling this one too, I mean, it might come up. It does do a solid straight 50 for the 4 energy, and then you can potentially have a lot more if you have taken damage beforehand. Let's face it, you probably will have. So that's kind of neat. And Berserk is even not the worst power ever. If you flip tails on this, you probably discard a couple of water energy for the other Gator to go in and, wreck stuff afterwards. So it's probably not even that bad. Other than that, I don't like the fact that I've cut down to 17 water in here at the moment, but I feel like if I want to keep this Gator for a secondary attack option, I kind of need to, because I'm going to need to use both my Magby here. I've always used one Magby in this deck, and it is very good. It's excellent against the Vileplume, the Noctowl, stuff like that. Really quite good against Electrode, and very good against most of the grass decks, because most of those need Pokemon powers to do stuff. Think Fragrance Trap from the Victory Bell, Energy Trance from the Venusaur, etc, etc. You can, and even Vileplume, Hay Fever, right? You can shut it down, and because it stops until the end of your next turn, that means you can actually use trainers for a turn under the Vileplume lock. One of the biggest reasons why Vileplume is not bad, but not as oppressive in this round, is because Magby is here. So, yeah, that's really good. And then the other sort of thing with it, I only have 9 basics in here. 5 of them are babies that have 0 retreat, and 3 of them are the Cleffa, right? Even this one's fine. Like, draw 2 has been surprisingly solid. So, being able to start Cleffa in guaranteed a third of the games, and then having Magby as 2 of the other ones to 0 retreat to it turn 1, very, very good. Starting fight, more than 50% chance to start a baby is good for going second too, because the opponent might not be able to attack on their first turn. So, very strong. Otherwise, my personal miss from here is I only have 1 Misty's Wrath, so post-rotation, when Comp Search, Item Finder, Professor Oak go, this deck probably doesn't work as well. I have a couple of things I could maybe play instead. Blaine's Gamble and Last Resort might be the draw engine to play here, but it's gonna be a lot harder to play post-rotation. But that's okay, because I'm currently looking at like a different deck every round so far, so I might not even play this outside of this. But this deck is insane. Like, it's got a lot of damage output, it recycles everything. Trash Exchange is very, very strong for this. It's like the only deck it's great in, but my god is it great in this deck. Because you just get to put all of your cards back in deck, and then you discard a bunch. You're probably discarding several waters that you just put back into the deck by doing that. So you get Riptide up again straight after. So the combo is like Trash Exchange plus Oak or Elm, and you pretty much just get to Riptide every turn for respectable damage. The fact of Trash Exchange might give you back copies of those Oaks and Elms, and more of itself as well. Absolutely fantastic. Really, really good stuff. I'd like to fit Goldberry in here, but there's just no space to. Honestly, the Focus Band is more important because it keeps your Cleffas alive, and you might be able to Riptide a second, like an additional turn, because the opponent just might not kill the Gator, not through their own choice, but it's insane. This deck is absolutely disgusting, and I'm definitely looking to rep this at the weekend. It's just crazy. However, it's not the only great deck that I have available here. I actually really like the Electrode stuff here. Electrode is rotating out after the next set, Neo Discovery, so we only have a couple of sets left to play this thing. The only reason I would consider not playing this deck is because Pepper and I have our eyes on Tyranitar next round, which would be the Electro deck of choice, if you will. We have Rock's Ninetales that we could transform into it, so we're kind of investigating that as a potential, because the Tyranitar can do baby wiping damage on the bench. It can just trample all over them, and it's very funny. So I might not play it just because of that, also because I only have 2 Darks. It's fine with 2 Darks, but it'd be much better if these like Energy Charge with Darkness Energy instead. But this deck is kind of crazy as well, because Sneasel is gross. Like, it's so devastating. It can backfire too, but oh man, averaging 60 damage with this thing every time for 1 Electrode attach is really good. Also, potentially higher if you put a Darkness Energy on it. You don't have to attach the Electrode, you can go Dark and Rainbows to get this thing going, and it's just ludicrously damaging. Not so sure I need both Murkrow even in here, but I mean, it's good for trapping stuff. It's 0 retreat, Psychic Resistance is always nice, so I kind of have it at the moment, but this could be a flex slot. And then, because Electrode uses the good Voltorb over here, sticking with the lightning stuff, Electabuzz and Rocket Zapdos are still super good, right? I only have 1 Rocket Zapdos, otherwise I'd play more of this. But, like, Electabuzz is just solid. This is going to rotate as well in a couple of sets, so get the use out of it whilst you can, right? And then, you don't need your Pokemon power most of the time. Electrode is a last resort more than anything, so Magby is really good here too. Could honestly see cutting a Murkrow and putting the second Magby in here. Otherwise, some of the other standout cards we have so far with this deck gets to play triple Lass. Cleffa plus Lass is an insane, stupid combo that if the opponent doesn't start their Cleffa as well, they're gonna have a hard time, because you are stripping away all of their stuff before they get a chance to play. It's turn 1 Lass has been devastating before, but now you have the potential for a turn 1 Lass with a Cleffa to back it up, right? So, kinda ludicrous. Double Gust is another particularly good standout, especially in this kind of deck. We have a lot of Pokemon with 0 retreat in this deck, and the ones that don't have 0 retreat, we typically want in anyway, right? Like, you can give me the Voltorb, but then I evolve to Electrode, and I just knock it out, give energy to what I want to attack with anyway. If you give me the Zapdos, that's just a really good efficient attacker, same with the Electabuzz. So, we don't really have anything the opponent wants to double gust in here. So it's pretty strong. And really the reason for double gust instead of regular gust of wind in here is because it also condenses the switch slot as well. I don't have to play switch because I can use this instead. And this gets us out of opposing damaging mean looks and stuff like that. Like, mean look is just such a stupid attack because you can't retreat ever unless you evolve or you bench, you know, like you gust out the Murkrow or something, right? So you need outs to it, and double gust is definitely one of the better ones. Otherwise, like, all of my decks this week have basically been running no removal gym, not because it's amazing, but because I don't have Ecogym, more or less. No removal gym is a little bit worse because most of the time the opponent's going to have a bunch of cards in their hand thanks to Eek, so it doesn't tend to stop energy removal being played, but it at least attaches a cost to it, and that's better than nothing. So yeah, there is that. Also, I'm playing a blend of like Elm and Oak here, because Oak, I mean, it's probably better for this sort of deck, but I don't want to discard all my Rainbows and Dark Energies, right? Whereas Elm, you can't play trainers for the rest of the turn, but you do get that shuffle draw, and in this deck, really what you're looking for is a bunch of basics to put down for Sneasel, or the Dark Rainbow energy for it, right? So, it kind of makes sense to just have like a bunch of that. Maybe I could take out the energy charge and just put more of these in. I kind of like the idea of energy charge though, just because it's the only way of getting dark energy back. And, you know, heavy removal lines are still going to be a problem for this to deal with. So, I kind of like it, but at the same time it's not a coin toss, it's whatever. I don't know. The second, or like the third deck even to look at, maybe a little bit more on the fun side, but this one does have a lot of potential against a really high HP evolving decks, and that is revolving around Life Drain from Sabrina's Kadabra here. I do have a fourth copy that I could play, I just don't know how I'd fit it in considering the Golbat line in here as well. Life Drain, you flip heads, and you've got Sabrina's ESP to give you a second chance to flip that heads, and if you flip heads you put the opponent down to exactly 10 HP left. So that gigantic Feraligatr, you just do like 110 to it, and it's great. How you get the rest of the damage on is next turn you attack them with the Dark Golbat sneak attack. You just evolve into this and do the remaining 10 damage, take the knockout during your turn, which is pretty great. You can also use this on babies if they have or anything that survived with a focus band, so that's also pretty great. And we have 3 copies of Super Scoop Up, that's as many as I pulled, but we have the Super Scoop Up to try and get the Golbat back into hand so we can play down multiple in a turn. If we have 2 Zubat lined up, we can evolve 1 Golbat, Super Scoop Up the Golbat if we flip heads, and then the second Zubat actually can evolve in the same turn with the same Golbat, and you can get an extra ping too, so definitely pretty strong. Otherwise, we have the Sabrina's Alakazam because this can, I only have the 1 copy, but it's fine. You can link other psychic attacks to this, so you can use the likes of the Mewtwo's attacks here. So we've got 3 different ones. Like Energy Absorption is just a decent attack, right? But Cyburn is still pretty good. Telekinesis lets you snipe 30 on one of the opponent's bench Pokemon. That just so happens to kill all the babies, so you could use Alakazam to do that attack as well. And then Rocky's Mewtwo just has some pretty strong attacks. I'm not convinced on this card, to be honest. It might be a bit too cute, but I kind of do like the idea of having a solid, consistent 60 a turn, because Mega Burn you can't use in consecutive turns. So I do like the idea of having a 60 damage move out here. You could probably switch it for something else, though. I don't know. Yeah, otherwise it's... Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the same stuff with it. The Focus Band is going to be in every single deck, because this thing is just ludicrous. There's no way of removing it either, so absolutely need to play that. The no removals, because I'm not playing energy removal myself. And yeah, it's just a get the pings down after you Life Drain. The problem is, if you don't flip heads, you're kind of stuffed. So, I don't know. It's a fun deck. Probably not the most competitive one, but it could take down virtually anything with like 1 energy in an evolution if you flip heads. So there is that. Probably a slightly more competitive one here would be the Noctowl. There's a couple of ways of running this. As one, I'm not playing the typical Sneasel because I only have the 2 Dark Energy at the moment, but I could see running like a Noctowl based, say, Electrode deck, maybe 2-2 Electrode, and like focus on the Sneasel line a lot more that way. But this thing is Rocket Sneak Attack if you flip heads once per turn, so if you have multiple Noctowl, you can do it multiple times. And it's a disruption deck, right? We have the Noctowl to stun a bunch. I don't actually have like last because I do have regular sneak attack as well. So we're trying to stun the opponent's trainers down quite a bit and then just use our efficient 30 for 2 energy type attacks here to knock out the Cleffas that would be going against us as well. Murkrow can potentially lock in something that the opponent plays. We do play Rainbows, so like 1 Murkrow seems fine here. We can lock in one of the opponent's Pokemon that can't really damage us, and then just continue to peck away at the hand and stuff. Try and make it so they can't draw Double Gust outs and stuff like that to get away from the Murkrow. And then just feint attack, take out the stuff on the bench as we go. The main weakness of this deck is Pichu, which I don't actually own, but I know at least a couple of us do own. And Pichu does a ton of damage to the Pokemon with powers, so you really got to make sure you don't evolve the Noctowl too early at that point. If you see Pichu, you've got to just be very careful around it. Try and get rid of it before it can wreck your Noctowls. Otherwise, it's pretty solid. The Sudowoodo is also weak to water, not grass, so the typical outs that Lightning decks have played against the fighting type don't work against Sudowoodo. It's got a completely different weakness to every other fighting type, which is neat. So, also does quite a bit of damage too. You can Rainbow Energy this and actually get a bit more damage out of Flail, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, just solid, cheap damage overall with the Noctowl trying to stun the opponents down. It's decent. I think it's like the 3rd best deck I'd have here. I probably won't play it, but it is something that I've had fun testing with, so not too bad. And then we get a couple of like fringe options down here, which are more on the for fun side. I do think Venusaur is actually a competitive deck this round, if only because it beats up for Alligator in one hit. That actually is not unreasonable. To be honest, it's one of the few things in the game that can one-shot the for Alligator, so definitely considerable if only for that. But also because if there aren't as many energy removals flying around, Energy Trance is just really solid to keep your stuff in play, right? We do have Pokemon Center, we maintain Pokemon Center even after rotation, so we have the modern day Cheryl to like full heal everything, and that's just really good in general. Dodrio fits in here because it reduces your retreat cost down so you can double gust more effectively. The Mewtwo can get back Rainbow Energy, which is pretty good. Also just gets back Grass out of the discard so you can transfer onto other stuff. Otherwise, Rapidash is the main, like Ponytail Rapidash here are the main tech for this round, because I don't know if people are going to open it. But if somebody gets Steelix in this round and you run in with Venusaur, you are screwed. Because Venusaur only does like 30 damage to it. It resists your grass attacks. And it's just not fun. You might be able to poison it down with Ivysaur. I guess that could be something. But then Ivysaur doesn't do any damage whatsoever to Steelix. So that's a very expensive attempt to like tech on it. So yeah, Venusaur would only do 30, and then Metal Energy reduces that down. You're probably only going to do about 10 damage to a Steelix, which has 110 HP, smacks you for up to 50 damage on its move, if I remember rightly. It's like 30 plus 20 on a coin flip, and it has gold berries and everything available, so you kind of need something to go against that. And since I'm playing Rainbow Energy anyway, and Rapidash and the Ponyta actually don't need very many Fire Energy for their attacks, this just seems like it would make sense. Because then you have weakness against them, and you might actually do some spread damage to the bench too, which is quite important for 70 HP mons that Venusaur doesn't one-shot. The other advantage to playing Venusaur in this round is it does do a one-hit KO on Sneasel, so it actually just wipes out one of the biggest threats the game has ever seen in one attack, which is pretty good. So there are merits to playing it for sure. You could also get away with playing a heavy last engine here because Cleffa can help out that a lot. So, you know, it just kind of works. Bunch of cool stuff that you can do with it. And then lastly, because I have the Ninetales, I built a couple of Ninetales decks. The Shapeshift ability is super interesting, but I think the best one that I have available to me at the moment is going to be the Sabrina's Haunter deck here. So, the Haunter is very frail, but that's what Focus Band is good for. You might be able to survive an extra hit with that. And yeah, it's a little flippy. Again, at least we have Sabrina's ESP, unlike Sneasel, to do the stuff here. But also, unlike Sneasel, this is a 30 times modifier. It does require specifically Sabrina's Ghost Pokemon to be in play, which is where the Ninetales comes in, because the Ninetales you can shapeshift into Sabrina's Haunter or Gengar, so you can get up to a full board of 6 in play. If you have 2 Ninetales, you transform one to a Haunter, say one to a Gengar, and you play the Sabrina's Ghastly down as well. You don't have to evolve the Ghastly. So you can go Ghastly, 2 Haunter, 2 Ninetales that goes Haunter Gengar, then you're set. You can get a full 6 in play, and potentially swing for like an average of 90 damage a turn, which is really, really strong. The other thing with this one, I don't know if the Mewtwo is actually worth it. I always seem to jam Mewtwo in this, like one copy in the Psychic decks, just because it's like decent pressure. It might not be quite as good with a baby Pokemon here though, because you have to flip to absorb in the first place, which seems kind of rough. I don't know, I mean, I could see it, but it's still potentially questionable. You could easily flex that slot. The other tech that I've put in here is Dark Golduck, because everything that I attack with in this deck is Psychic. And I only have one Resistance gem, so any Psychic Resistance stuff, like Sneasel, will kind of just beat you. Like, Golduck doesn't one-shot Sneasel, which is kind of annoying, but it does do 50, and it's water typing too, so it can go against different weakness stuff, which is quite nice. But it's mostly because it can hit good damage without actually being a Psychic type. And I think that one tech slot instead of like a second Gengar here is probably best. Side note with the Gengar, if you Dark Wave and you have something attached to the Ninetales, it kind of goes away. So it's a really bad attack to go with here. That's why Magby's not in this deck as well. You've seen Magby wasn't in the Noctowl deck either. And that's pretty much, or even the Venusaur deck. There's a fair few I don't have it in, and that's because they kind of rely on their powers, right? So Magby works in decks that don't need that stuff, but if you rely on your powers too much, you probably aren't going to get that much use out of Magby. You could still arguably tech it in here though, just because it helps against Vileplume. But I think you just have to suck that up this round, and then go for it next round with Igglybuff, would be my sort of thing for it. But yeah, this deck is fun. I don't know, I don't think Master Ball is quite the right play in here. I could maybe just see playing more Elm or more Oak in here instead. The Here Comes Team Rocket's an interesting one because you need your Haunters and Gengar out for prize cards, right? You need them out of the prizes in order to do enough damage. So this lets you see what the prizes are so you know what to pick up. So that's the main decks I've been looking at. I have built another one on Golduck. I've built another one on... not Golduck. I've built another one on the Golbat. I've built a water-based Ninetales thing that uses like Misty's Gyarados and the Chomp for Alligator. I don't think they're quite as good though. And the other one is Donphan that I made, but I only have 2 Phanpys, so it's more just like a last disruption build sort of thing. It's decent. I just don't think it's as good as some of the other stuff, or as interesting as some of the other stuff here. So I have not shown that one this round. However, there's a bunch of other decks that either I can't make because I didn't pull the stuff, or I'm just not going to play this round because I don't really think they're as good as the Gator that I can play. So let's just take a quick look. I can't build them because I don't have the cards, as I've said, but I can just like go over the combos. So the biggest one is Brock's Ninetales Steelix. I didn't pull any Steelix and I didn't pull any Metal Energy, so I couldn't play it because of that. But essentially, Brock's Ninetales, the reason you play that to go into Steelix here is because the Steelix is very vulnerable to energy removal. But Brock's Ninetales allows you to play Brock's Protection, which protects your energy on a Brock's Pokemon from being removed. It kind of acts like a pseudo tool, where it was a tool the set before they introduced Pokemon tools. So you attach it to a Pokemon with Brock in its name, and then even if you shapeshift the Ninetales into something like this that isn't Brock in its name, it still keeps the protection. So you're invulnerable to energy removal, you play a bunch of metal energy onto the Steelix so it just never gets damaged, you're building up one Steelix with like a ton of metal to reduce the damage down a lot, and then you just play Goldberry and you kind of never die. That's the idea. So it loses to Magby is probably the big problem, because Magby will stop the shapeshift, and so you'll lose the Steelix. But if you get rid of Magby before you actually start attacking with the Ninetales like Steelix combo, still pretty good. So definitely very strong there. Metal Chansey is actually one which I just would never be able to pull because I've not got any of these. Chansey's Double Edge does a ton of damage to itself, but because of a loophole with metal, it's not even a loophole, it's intended behavior, but like because of a weird quirk with metal energy, you reduce recoil damage done to yourself twice per metal energy. So when you read it through, damage done to the Pokemon metal energy is attached to is reduced by 10. That is damage from any attack that happens here. It doesn't stop Golduck, just for the record, but like damage done by any attack, including your own, is reduced by 10. So metal energy can reduce damage from, say, Earthquake against you as well, which is quite nice. And also, any damage, if the Pokemon metal energy attached to is not metal, whenever it damages any Pokemon, reduce that damage by 10. So that also includes itself. So it has two separate triggers to reduce 10 damage on the thing. And so Chansey with just one metal energy does 70 to the opponent, 60 to itself. The goal is to get 3 or 4 metal energy on this thing. And yeah, it will only do about 40 damage, 40-50 at that point. But then it does nothing to itself if you have 4 metal on it. And it's 120 HP, reducing damage by 40 every turn. You can Goldberry the heck out of that. It's never dying, right? Nothing in the game can hit Chansey for 160 damage. Without like double plus powered Dog Trio or something. I think maybe actually Golem Self-Destruct might do it, and that's about it. It's actually kind of insane how tanky it becomes. One of the decks Sai was testing out last night, once we eventually built it up, was Dragonite Dart Vileplume. So, Dragonite Step In lets you retreat. Basically, it's like Keldeo Rush In, or I don't know if there's I don't think there's one in the current format, but like Keldeo, Dawnwings Lunala, Dawnwings Necrozma, and Zoroark are the ones I remember having, this sort of thing, where you can just force it into the active from the bench. If you play this with a Dark Gloom, you can like confuse your own Vileplume to give you trainer cards for a turn if it's in the active slot, and then once you're done playing trainers, you use the Dragonite to step in, and then the opponent just still doesn't get to play trainers. It's really stupid. Also, Recycle Energy means that you can just pay 1 to retreat, but that energy goes back into the hand, and so you can keep going with it again and again. Honestly, the only reason I'm not playing the Dragonite is because I didn't pull Recycle Energy. That would have been a very strong consideration otherwise. But very, very annoying deck. The Dark Gloom can confuse the opponent's active as well, so yeah, you gotta have some pretty specific stuff. Play Magby or lose to this. Sneasel Pichu is one that Sai could definitely attempt here. Pichu, he has 1 copy of, you only normally see 1 or 2 anyway. This has a really nasty effect against all the ability mons, so again, stuff like the Dragonite up here, this would take so much damage from that. It's actually kind of insane. For a good thing. It's one of the reasons why Vileplume might not be the play this round, because Pichu is disgusting. However, it was a holo that I didn't pull, so unfortunately no Pichu for me. But that is fine. It's neat, and Sneasel with like a bunch of babies in play, you can do crazy damage with it, right? You just fill the bench with a baby Pokemon because they have 0 retreat. You can double gust anything that you want at that stage, and yeah, 2 Darkness on this thing is averaging 80 damage a turn. It's stupid strong. Wigglytuff Muck, I mean I can play the Muck, but I don't have the Wigglytuff. This is something I could see Pepper playing, potentially. I don't think he will, but like Pepper or Matt could definitely play this. And yeah, just Wigglytuff is generally really good. Babies are really good to place down as like extra basics, because again, 0 retreat. Something we haven't seen that often, to be honest, is 0 retreat mons outside of Cypher. And yeah, no, they're just super good to go on the bench and set up with as well. And then the Muck, of course, just shuts down abilities, so you get to kill a lot of the strong decks out there, whilst also just doing a ton of damage. I feel like Sneasel might honestly be better in a lot of cases, but Sneasel also takes up special energy. Wigglytuff you can play with recycle energy as well, and it works out super well. Typhlosion with Blaine's Arcanine is another one of the like super cool picks from this era. Typhlosion's Fire Recharge lets you get fire energy from your discard pile to your fire Pokemon if you flip heads. It can go active, which is the key thing here. And then the Arcanine, you would normally want a Metal Energy on here as well, because 120 damage you don't tend to need, 110 is totally fine, but the Metal Energy not only gives it some extra tanking, but also stops Heat Tackle from damaging itself as well if you need to use that. So if you can't power Firestorm that turn, at least you could do 30 with Heat Tackle and it'd be alright. But yeah, Blaine's Arcanine is a natural fit because it does 1-hit KO damage on any Pokemon in the game, and also benefits from having fire energy acceleration. It's a lot of setup with the stage 2s and stuff, but that's where heavy use of Cleffa for a lot of turns will help out a bunch there. The other deck that you can pair with Sneasel is Aerodactyl. A lot of the times these evolving Pokemon don't have a lot of HP in their low stage forms, so Sneasel is super quick to pick them off, and Aerodactyl just stops them getting there in the first place. So naturally strong combo that I don't have the Dactyl for. One deck I could play, I have 2 copies of the Clefable now, so one deck I could play is Clefable and Brock Sandslash. This is one from Jason's blog that doesn't look like much on the surface, but Brock Sandslash is just efficient, right? 2 fighting energy, 30 plus a poison chance is good. Swift can also go through resistance if you need it to, so that's kind of nice. But the Clefable is just super strong in the first place. If the opponent is running these big heavy hitters that do like a ton of damage but also take a lot of energy to do so, so long as they don't discard their energy for doing so, it's really powerful to just go in with Clefable afterwards. It's a fantastic answer to the Sneasels, because you can copy their beat up for just 1 energy, and they only have 60 HP. You need like an average result to KO the enemy Sneasel. So, super efficient deck, and I think that kind of works in its favor. Fighting is also just a favorable type in general. There's a lot of things that you can hit for weakness with that, and anything that resists you, well, that's what Clefable's good for. So there's that. If we had more Rocket Zapdos, I would consider Rocket Zapdos Muck. Only having 1 copy of it kind of makes it untenable. But yeah, I mean, Muck is just generally really strong, and Rocket Zapdos getting more energy out is great. Also benefits from Metal Energy if I had it, because it would do only 60 to itself with Electro Burn, and then, not 60 to itself, 60 to the opponent, 10 to itself with Electro Burn. So that would have been cool. And then one that Matt could always run, but he might just do it anyway, is the Blastoise. I mean, Blastoise does benefit quite a bit from having Professor Elm in the format, because you can actually draw like more cards with that. There's more draw 7s, get more Pokemon out with that, more energy into the hand. You don't have to end your turn with computer error. So yeah, Blastoise benefits quite a bit. So very strong deck even with Gator there. And then there's some rogue options as well that I feel could be pretty strong. I still like this Blaine's Ninetales, just I didn't pull it obviously, but like Blaine's Ninetales, you can power this thing up in one turn. If you heal 20 damage as you do so, and if you flip tails, you discard all the energy, but that's what you Blaine next turn, and just attach again, right? 50 damage for one turn's worth of attachments is pretty nuts. So the only thing holding this back is the low HP, but it does self-heal, so there is that going for it. You could also use Focus Band with this quite easily, so it's pretty strong. This Meganium would have been really cool with Executor, because it gives you more double colorless, basically. Every single one of your grass energy on Executor becomes a double colorless energy, for, effectively, for the big explosion here. So this deck would have been really fun to see. I don't think anyone's actually pulled this so far, so that's a shame. Dark Wheezing is one that is worth experimenting with if you have Metal Energy. Dark Wheezing does 20 damage for every Coughing, Wheezing, Dark Wheezing you have in play. Not Koga's Wheezings, they weren't out at the time. But then it also does 20 damage to each of those Pokemon. However, if you put a Metal Energy on this thing, it reduces damage done to all Pokemon by 10. So you actually only do 10 damage to your benched Coughing, Wheezing, etc. And because of the thing I mentioned with Chansey before, it actually does 0 damage to itself, as well as reducing damage from the opponent by 10. So it's tankier than it looks. Like 60 HP doesn't look like a lot, that's because it isn't, but it actually can survive quite well. So yeah, with like Brock's Ninetales especially, you could do some pretty huge numbers with this. Brock's Ninetales going into the Dark Wheezings lets you have up to 6 in play, right? You do 120 damage at that point. Very cool, but a lot of setup really. Still pretty strong though. Raticate and Ninetales is still a really, not Ninetales, Mr. Mime. I've got Ninetales on the brain because of the other bit. Raticate Mr. Mime is still a really good option here, because the Raticate itself halves the HP of anything that the opponent has, and then the Mr. Mime does damage, additional damage for all the counters on. It two-shots everything in the game, and you can actually go ahead and use Resistance Gym to make sure that Psychic resistant Pokemon don't survive as well. So generally good, and Mr. Mime's ability can block out the really high damage stuff from like Sneasel, Wigglytuff, blah blah, you know, all the usual suspects. Still a strong deck, very fun deck to play as well, but definitely a rogue option here. The Lieutenant Surge's Electabuzz stuff from Psy has been definitely fun. Like I loved testing this. Unfortunately, just didn't pull any of it when it came to the actual draft itself, but I really like the idea with this deck. I don't think it's quite as strong this round because baby Pokemon could stop you from charging potentially, but you can't deny the power output of this Electabuzz. And even then, the consistency of getting extra energy out of the discard and just attaching them to bench Pokemon is really quite good. This Jolteon makes an excellent addition to the deck because it prevents the opponent from playing trainers sometimes with high voltage, but also provides a really big finishing move with Thunder Flare. You might want to put like a Metal Energy or a Defender or something on it so it doesn't kill itself afterwards, but like 30 plus 10 for each damage counter on it is kind of ludicrous, to be honest. So yeah, this hits really, really hard, and Vermilion City Gym could potentially make it hit harder as well. So definitely a neat one. Then we got Dark Hypno. I did show the power of like Drowsy before with the long distance hypnosis, but like Dark Hypno, because of it being a Pokemon with Dark in its name, Darkness Energy lets you buff its damage output without costing it HP every turn. So you actually can get more damage out of the bench manipulation than you could before, which is pretty cool. And obviously with Challenge, the opponent is likely to fill their bench, unless they know what you're going for. If they remember what the Hypno does, then you've already got a Drowsy down, they might not do it. But even then, it's just a draw 2, so it's not the worst out there, right? But yeah, no, it just seems really quite good, right? The opponent's going to be filling their bench up a lot because of baby Pokemon, so you can take advantage of that and clip them with Hypno. Seems pretty good. This is one Pepper. I don't remember if Pepper's got Pichu. I don't think so. But regardless, this is one that like Pepper's been building to as the Dark Raichu. Pichu is more just here as an auxiliary thing, but it's the spread deck, right? If you can flip heads on Surprise Thunder, then you can do quite a bit of damage to the opponent's bench, and the Pichu is just another way of doing damage to that bench. It's not necessary, but it is a pretty good help. So yeah, Dark Raichu, if you flip heads on the first coin, you flip a second one and do either 10 or 20 bench damage based on the result of that coin. So pretty good. Speaking of spread damage, we do have Brock's Golbat for doing that still. It's still pretty solid. And Gengar can actually use that spread to knock out baby Pokemon and stuff in your turn. So that could be pretty good. The main problem I think would be low initial output, but that would still be something worth looking at. The classic Arcanine Electro combo is still a good one here as well. If you have Metal Energy, you could attach that to the Arcanine as well. Like you can go 2 fire, the Electro gives you 2 fire, and then it's just like Metal, maybe Recycle Energy or something. And Takedown starts to do like very little damage to you. So with Metal Energy, this would be a fantastic pairing. And then the last one to talk about here, I know this has gone on quite a long time. I could talk for hours about this format. It is so good to play. The last one that Sai could maybe try is with this Victory Bell here. So Erica's Victory Bell lets you, if you flip heads, gust up one of the opponent's Pokemon, which is pretty good, right? You can do this with as many of these as you have per turn, so you can, if you get 2 of them down, you can try twice a turn. Don't have to play the Gust of Wind, so you could do this under locks and stuff like that. And then Murkrow prevents the opponent from retreating as long as it remains active. So the idea is that you Fragrance Trap them to get a Pokemon that can't really damage you up into the active slot, and then Mean Look. And if they can't play a Switch or a Gust option, like if they don't have them or if they played them all, they cannot retreat their active, basically ever. And you then just chip away at them with Feint Attack and just beat them that way. It's kind of diabolical, but it's really funny if it actually works out. To facilitate this, we also have the Smeargle here as well. This is the promo one, so we only have 1 copy of it at the moment, and it is on a coin toss. That kind of sucks, but you change the type of the defending Pokemon. So if there's something that can't do more than 30 damage, you change its type to Psychic, and then you can Mean Look it in. This color encounter doesn't go away when they switch or like retreat either. I don't even think know if it goes away if they evolve. I think it does, because I think all effects go away when you evolve. But yeah, it's like you can actually take in, say this even as Sudowoodo, right? From all the way back over here. This Sudowoodo maxes out at 30 damage unless you've already put damage counters on it. So you could bring this in, change it to a Psychic type, and then even if the opponent like gets rid of it, you've got Fragrance Trap, right? If they switch it to the bench, you gust it back in and you Mean Look it. And then they can't retreat, they can't evolve, they can't they have to play the Gust option. And if they don't have it, you win the game. And that's kind of the idea. So a very funny deck. Probably not the most consistent one, but it would be a way of dealing with some really silly threats. So I think it could be entertaining. So definitely one to keep on the books. So with that all said, my goodness, like I've said, I could talk so long about this format. I hope you've at least found this informative and look forward to our games in a couple of days. I mean, time of recording, we're playing this tomorrow, but yeah, as far as the video, like the VOD stuff goes, it'll probably be up the day after. So look forward to that. Hopefully for Alligator we'll do some work, assuming that's what I play. Probably will be, but I like this deck too, so I don't know. Should be fun. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been Gamer Cat, of course. Once again, talking about the base to Neo Genesis format we find ourselves in here. And until next time, take care everyone.